name is Robert Michael Pyle, otherwise known as Bob. I am a writer and a biologist. I live in Grays River, Washington. I'm an independent scholar, not to say independently wealthy, but I don't work for anyone, except when I do. And one person or entity I've worked for from time to time over the past 20 years plus has been the North Cascades Institute. And I have been involved with the Institute not from day one, but certainly from season one, sharing classes in butterflies and writing and general natural history. It's not very long after I decided to become freelance, I realized that books were not going to make a living anytime soon. And in fact, they never have. They've always been a component. So I began casting about for ways to make a buck, but also I didn't want to lose my connection to teaching, having forsaken a pursuit of an academic career, and also having left the field of nature interpretation. When I discovered that there were things like the National Wildlife Federation's conservation summits and various other kinds of teaching opportunities in natural history, I was thrilled, and I began taking part in those. So when the North Cascades Institute came along, it seemed custom made for an approach that one could take to go into the field, connect with the plants and animals, but also connect to people that cared about the plants and animals through the medium of an umbrella organization that thought it was a good thing, thought it was generally a good thing to bring these together. North Cascades Institute leaped into the field of natural history teaching in a strong way from day one and has never, ever, ever had that particular crisis of confidence or loss of faith. All have always understood, and this is one reason I've always felt comfortable in anything to do with the North Cascades Institute, is that there is that common sense that it is a fundamentally good thing to draw people and the rest of nature together through many different means. Now, one thing that I've enjoyed watching with the North Cascades Institute from the beginning, and that I've felt very comfortable with, has been the way in which the Institute and its teachers and its organizers and its administrators and everybody connected with it seems to have a common sense that people have more than one arrow in their quiver. They don't have one arm tied behind their back, and they don't need to. The people are whole organisms with different impulses, different inclinations, different drives, different satisfactions. And some of those are intellectual, and some of them are emotional. Some of them are very limbic, right back, some of them go back to the reptile brain. They're very basic satisfactions. And one of those has to do with face-to-face with other animals and plants. That's biophilia. So that's right in there too. But then there's the intellectual aspect of trying to learn a little bit more about how these systems actually work. The actual content. I was so thrilled with North Cascades this past summer to get to sit in on all the talks and studies about the rare big mammals in the North Cascades, to learn so much more about these animals that I had liked and admired and thought I knew a little something about over the years, then to get that greater depth. So there's a depth that I would actually say touches the intellectual ends of things. But then, beyond and apart and in addition to that, there is this sense that people have that we are not solely reactive organisms, we're not solely intellectual organisms, we're also emotional. Some people would call it spiritual organisms, that we have a part of us that requires entirely different satisfactions, or asks for them, or begs for them. And one of those is the what we can call a creative, subjective, personal, emotional response to the world. In way too many milieus, that's been subordinated to the objective, intellectual, analytical response. And there are times when they should be separate, probably. I mean, if you have a bridge builder who's a poet, and you'd rather they wrote their poetry after they went home from their day of designing bridges, for example. But a person can be both. We can we can have more than one arrow in our quiver. So I came across a phrase years ago working on a book about Vladimir Nabokov, the great author and lepidopterist, who operated both in a scientific framework and a high artistic framework. And he said in an obscure source that I found, does there not exist a high ridge where the mountainside of scientific knowledge meets the opposite slope of artistic imagination? And I said, this is what the North Cascades Institute does. They honor the whole person at both those levels of connection with the natural world. The high ridge, and I would say, and it's such a beautiful metaphor for NCI, for the North Cascades Institute, because you're up there in the high ridge between sourdough and the next one, it's right up there. That's where it lies. I mean, what's unique about the North Cascades Institute, and especially more so now that some other similar kinds of organizations have basically dropped out of the scene, is that it takes this person who clearly, they're self-selected groups because they're people who clearly have an interest in natural history, as I did as a kid, gives them a medium through which to engage with, first of all, teachers, mentors, leaders, instructors, interpreters, rangers, whatever you want to call them, the kind of a person who knows the landscape and the landscape itself, and all the elements of the landscape, the elements of diversity, the plants, the animals, the geologic substrate, the atmospherics. The leaders take those people into those places and then rub them up against it. Create friction, create sparks, create an intellectual spark of recognition, satisfy curiosity, tickle curiosity to make people go away wanting to know more, not go away as if they know it all. If people left a North Cascades Institute class feeling, okay, I checked that off, now I know about birds, now I know about flowers, now I know about butterflies and lynxes, that would be one thing. But it's far more important for them to go away and say, wow, that was interesting. I would like to know more. And not only that, I'd like to know that this particular group of organisms has a future. Then you've created somebody who's not only an ongoing naturalist, but is an ongoing conservationist. I don't know very many other organizations that do that take it all the way through. Catching that interest, feeding that interest, and delivering them into their communities as more informed, better able to function as conservationists and naturalists. Makes people's lives better, makes their communities better. A lot of the classes North Cascades Institute has done over the years have been collaborative. The spring and other season naturalist retreats, same with the writers' retreats, where a number of different faculty were working together with a broad body of students in order to gain not just a specialized view of the resource or of the ecology of an area, but from a number of different angles and facets. I think that was a brilliant idea to bring different teachers together. And of course that meant you had a larger body of students than you would normally have, and that meant that again you would have a broader array of shared expertise. So when we would do a good spring naturalist retreat with maybe Libby Mills and Art Kirkeberg and Saul Weisberg, maybe myself, various other people teaching together, and then maybe, 40 or 50 people breaking up into smaller groups, going out with each, and then commingling again, coming back together in the evening and sharing the specialties we found that day. That was always very special. And keeping species lists. And then asking questions back and forth. Well, we saw this and this on our group. Do you have any idea what that was? Oh yeah, we saw that the day before, and this person knew that. And that I've been able to take part in not only the collaborative naturalist retreats, but also some of the writers' retreats, where usually 4 different writers would teach. We'd each bring our own style and method of not only teaching, but writing and reading. And the students, or guest writers, would have part of each day with each of us. And we would all write things together and read things together. And we would see this blend, this soup, coming together not only of the 4 teachers, but all the different writing voices. They were very, very rich. So I remember, for example, doing it with Ann Swinger and Barbara Kingsolver. One of the rare occasions when Barbara was still teaching, and she taught with us because her husband was teaching a birdsong biology class for you at the same time at Sleeping Lady. That was very exciting. Barbara gave such a stunning reading there that night. The people who got to study with her will never forget it. And let's see, the fourth person that year was Tim McNulty, the wonderful poet from the Olympic Peninsula. That was a splendid time. I came away feeling certainly as if I had learned as much as I had taught. Every single North Cascades class that I've been privileged to take part in, teach in, share in, has carried through for me its own memories, its own connections, and I can't help but think that it's done the same for all the other participants. That's got to have made them feel that they've had richer lives and give them a deeper connection to their community when they go back home. I think it has to. I think the homing in of the North Cascades Institute on Diablo Lake in North Cascades National Park was a masterstroke. It's a superb location. It's so diverse, botanically, zoologically, geologically. It's scenic. It's relatively easy access, and it's extremely easy on the eye and on the entire physical corpus. When we take our bodies into that place, we can almost not help but be happy the whole time we're there and engaged. And the facility itself of the Environmental Learning Center is magnificently realized such a way that I just think it was a great idea that was a huge amount of work, and it worked out well. I think I came to realize that what made it different was this extraordinarily abrupt meeting of that dry Ponderosa east side running up those glacial valleys and hitting face to face the temperate rainforest on the other side. Now that tension is present in almost every mountain range everywhere, a wet and a dry side. But I don't know anywhere where it's more pronounced than in the North Cascades. It's not as pronounced in the South Cascades, certainly not in the Olympics, where you have temperate rainforest qualities on both sides, even though there is a rain shadow on the east side. But in the North Cascades, with these high dramatic peaks, dry, fragrant pine conditions coming up here, wet, soggy, sluggy, moist conditioning coming up here, and then bang, they meet. At high passes, no low passes at all. Even where the highway was put is a high pass. There's no low passages at all. And so this abrupt, young, dramatic mountain range, dry, wet, terra incognita to the north. To me, the North Cascades differs from all the other mountain ranges that I know anywhere in its degree of discreteness combined with diversity. It's this big lump of relatively young, extremely diverse geographic and geologic expressions punched up through the surface. It's part of the Western Cordillera, yes, by all means, but a part that's not directly, it's part of the Pacific Rim of Fire, part of the long range of the Cascades, absolutely. And yet it has its own discrete boundaries. The valleys to the north, the low passes to the south, the sage, hot, fragrant valleys to the east, the wet, soggy valleys to the west, that all meet in this great, high, dramatic mountain range. It's a clump, it's a cluster, it's a unit, it's almost an organism crouching there in the northwest sector of the high center of the state. They're crouching in the northern portion of the Washington. I keep getting caught up in my own words. Let me try that. Take three there. That great clump of mountains crouching up in the north central sector of the state. But as
That's how.
Van Morrison says in the most beautiful song that he sings, which I heard him sing in Amsterdam, and the song Caris Fergus, I think is the name of the song. And the last line goes, "But I'll tell no more until I get a drink."
That's my cue
That's your cue?
to go get another beer.
Yeah,
I
good.
understood that translation.